Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gamers Gambit, the show where a bunch of us nerdy ass YouTubers sit around and talk about all things gaming. My name is Jack, aka Don Hayes, and in today's session, we're going to be discussing subscription models in gaming. However, before we jump into the crux of the show, let's first introduce the panel. So, for those of you watching on YouTube, to the bottom of the screen, you'll see the man, myth, the legend, and the co-host of the show, Killjoy. And to the top right of the screen is Greg from Egregious Games. How's it going, gentlemen?
Good.
Yeah, fairly nice, chilled day. Feeling ready to have a good discussion, maybe an argument. Who knows?
Well,
But yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I mean it's hard work being right all the time. I gotta say, but hey,
Damn.
yeah. So shots fired. So yeah, subscription models in gaming is the discussion for today. Something a bit maybe more lighthearted than some of our other ones. But yeah, so basically, there's a couple of things we're going to be going over today. We're going to go over most of the main subscription services that there are, look at pricing and other things and bits and bobs like that, and talk about our experiences with them, and just talk about, like, is this the future of where gaming is going, or is this still sort of, people want piecemeal, they want choice, all that kind of stuff. So we'll get into it, but let's start off with a nice easy question, because that's always a good place to start. And so to you guys, basically, what are your experiences with any of these subscription models, and kind of like how have you found using them? I will start with you, Greg.
I was not expecting this because this is our first take. Yeah, my main experience is with Humble Bundle, our Humble Monthly, now called Humble Choice. And I was very lucky. I got in on this when it was very new, and you just got all the games. Now it's like you have to choose which games you want. But back when it started, it's just you get all these games and you get them permanently. This isn't a thing where you have to stay subscribed. And it's, for me, it's been probably one of the best value for money things I've ever been on. There have been times when I've unsubscribed for a month, and then the month that I unsubscribed, they drop some really good game that I would have wanted to buy at full price that was like 20 or 30 or 40 quid, and then I am like, I should just not unsubscribe ever, because that always happens. And yeah, because I got in early, you can I get to stay on the classic bundle, which is like locked in at the lower price. So that's a very, very good one that I like. Haven't used many of the other modern ones, except for the one time you guys were playing Mech Warrior, and I was like, I don't have the game, and you were like, yo, just give Microsoft a quid for a free month, or a first 3 months. I was like, really? Just a quid? That's such a great offer. I think I'll do that right now. And and that was good. I got to play Mech Warrior. And I'll talk more about my opinions on the whole of subscription services and where it's going later, but that's my general experience thus far.
Same to you then, Jack.
So my experience has pretty much solely been on Xbox Game Pass as far as an actual subscription service. And it's really good value for money, like unbelievably good value for money. There's like over 300 games there. We get day one releases, which is awesome. Plus a lot of them, like Gears, for example, you get like the Ultimate Edition, which is like 90 quid if you buy it on like Steam or Epic. Whereas, you get it for like 8 quid, I think it is. $7.99 a month. Or if it's your first time subscribing to Xbox Game Pass, you literally get it for a quid for 3 months. It's mental. Like, that's what I did with Gears Tactics. 50 quid on Steam, £1 on Xbox. It's a no-brainer. And I think they've very much taken kind of the model that already works with like Netflix, Now TV, Prime, etc., and they've just tailored that into the gaming market. And I think it is, in my opinion, it's got to be the way forward. You need to look to see how successful those subscription models are with other industries, but I'm sure we'll come on to that more later. But yeah, my view is I definitely think it's heading in the right direction, and I want to see more of it. And I think Xbox and Microsoft have done extremely well off the back of it.
Yeah, I think Game Pass, we'll get into that in more detail, because I have a lot to say on that one specifically. In terms of the stuff that I've used, I have used Game Pass, but I've also used Nintendo Switch Online. Both I've had no issues with. They offer very different things, but like in terms of pricing and stuff, they've both been fairly cheap. I mean, Nintendo Switch Online is 30 quid for a year, compared to something like PS Plus, which is like 50 quid. That's a family plan, so I can dole it out to other people when they can just give me a fiver. It basically costs me fuck all for a year, which is really, really cool, and that gets me access to various different things. Mostly a lot of classic games, which, depending on who you are, you may or may not see value in that. But both that and Game Pass, I've currently got the 3 months for £1 for Game Pass Ultimate, and I've used it to play Mech Warrior. I've used it to play Desperados 3, maybe some other stuff as well. But those are the two that come to mind. And it's definitely a very enticing model, and it makes me realize that maybe gaming doesn't need to be as expensive as it is overall. So that's kind of my experiences with it. But yeah, I thought, let's dive a bit deeper into some of these. Now, Greg, you obviously brought up Humble Choice. Now, did they not do... I haven't used it in a while. I used to buy Humble bundles. I don't know if they still do those. Is it all just...
they've got loads of bundles at any given time.
Yeah.
Now, they've got book bundles. They've got software bundles, game dev asset bundles.
Nice.
They've really expanded the whole range, and so that they've got about 10 bundles at any given time, which is just a buy it and then you get it thing, and then the monthly thing is the subscription service.
Yeah,
and for those, you still get them permanently even if you stop subscribing.
Because isn't it like tiered? So the higher tier, you get more stuff, don't you? Something like that.
For choice, yeah, I believe so. Like I said, because I got in early, I've just been locked in on sort of the best tier.
Yeah,
and now it's you get a certain number of choices based on what tier. And if I wasn't locked in on the best tier, I probably would err on the side of not going for the top one, because it tends to be most games I'm not super interested. Most games from the choice I don't end up playing. But those few that I do end up playing are so discounted from what I would pay that it's worth it. And often I'll end up with loads of extras of games I already have and end up giving away to friends, which is great because, you just get the keys and then they get them.
Yeah. I'm just trying to find out the different tiers of it now. But I do remember looking at it and basically being like, this is pretty cool, because the nice thing about Humble as well is that it's all DRM free as well, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
So you don't even have to... I mean, a lot of the time they'll give you Steam keys, but I think you can just choose an exe file, can't you? As a download. I could be wrong.
For a lot of them, I wouldn't say that authoritatively. I don't know the answer for sure, but I generally get Steam keys. But I know for a lot of them, you can just get it down. I think that's more of an indie thing. All of the indie games, I've definitely gotten just downloads of indie games in the past.
Yeah. I'm all for, it's weird now because IGN actually owns, or the parent company of IGN owns Humble, which is really strange. But I bought Humble bundles in the past because I think if you pay a certain price, if enough people do it, unlocks games as it goes along, and you buy 5 games, and then as more people do it, you will get another 5 games. So I got a ton of stuff on Steam that was stuff like Lone Survivor. I never played Lone Survivor and Amnesia and stuff like that were parts of these bundles. But that's 2 games out of the other 5 that I got and stuff like that. And it was great. I've gotten tons of things from there in the past. Not so much recently because I kind of forgot about it, but some really fun games. And I can only say good things about it. And I'm going to try and look up things about this subscription model on it now. But I think Humble's actually a really good place to spend your money because they do a lot of charity stuff as well.
Yeah, it has changed. It's gotten a bit more corporatized. Obviously, it's been kind of bought out. The things I've noticed from a consumer perspective are that you used to be able to choose the exact breakdown of where that money went, whether it's to the developers or to the charities, and then to which specific charity, which I liked because I don't think all charities are equal. And often I would just give it all to the charity. I didn't want to give the tip to Humble, and now it's kind of locked in. They don't allow you to choose that, which is obviously because a lot of people like me were just going, Humble doesn't need any more money.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't. Yeah, we want some money.
So, are you locked to the classic tier? Is that the one that you're on?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a light, basic, premium, and classic. Classic is 12 a month, 10 games a month. That's pretty nuts. And then you get access to Humble Trove, and then 20% off the store. That's $12, so that's probably about 10 quid. And then for premium, it's $20, which is 9 games. So technically, being on classic is actually better because it's cheaper, and you get one more game than the premium, but the premium is now $20. So that's interesting they've done that. But yeah, you actually get quite a bit for your money here reading this. I mean, like, you don't get any games, but you get Humble Trove and discount score. So, like, if you're into a lot of like that money going, being sent to the right places, and a lot of like good a lot of indie games I find, but there are other ones in there. Definitely, definitely really good Humble monthly. That might be something I consider signing up to. I need to have a look what's on there currently, but it's just really cool. I've always liked what they've been done, and like I said in the past, they've done a lot of charity stuff, which has been good. But from what you've just said, it does sound like it's maybe not quite as charitable anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. But from a consumer perspective, I've gotten some like really big games out of it. I've gotten like Control. I've gotten like XCOM 2, which I already had, but that's a huge game. With all like the DLC as well. I got like Vermintide. I think it's Vermintide 1 or 2. There's so many big games I've gotten out of it that you would end up paying a minimum of 20 quid for just that game on Steam.
Yeah.
And often they're more expensive.
I have to look into this. I've genuinely never heard of it until now.
Yeah, I've got a bunch of Steam games off of that and things in the past. It's good. I think I got Game Dev Tycoon from Humble. Or did I just buy that from them? I can't remember, but I remember. Yeah, I really like that game. That's a fun game. But yeah, I personally would recommend people checking this one out specifically because I think it's a fairly good cause, and they don't seem to be trying to overcharge you for too much. And I mean, to be honest, even if you're paying for the basic version, which is still free games for $14.99 a month, that's free games. Yeah, it might not always be to your liking, but most games nowadays you're looking at minimum. A lot of the time they're like £10 plus or whatever. So you're still, and you're getting money off in the store and things like that. So yeah, I need to recheck out this because there's so many different bundles on at the moment actually. So yeah, I need to check out some bits and bobs and maybe see if that's something for me personally. I know, Jack, you're probably going to go into Game Pass quite a lot in a minute. So before we do that, because I think Game Pass is going to be quite a big topic, I want to talk a little bit more about the Nintendo Switch Online stuff. Now, for me, what it basically does is it gives you access to Nintendo's back catalogue of like NES and SNES games at the moment. Quite possibly they're going to add N64 or Game Boy or whatever they add. But you basically get a bunch of third-party games. Now, if people don't know, Nintendo products like tend to be always considered high quality. Out of the three companies, Microsoft, PlayStation, and Nintendo stuff hardly ever goes like new games like Breath of the Wild or Mario Odyssey. Very rarely go below 33% off. They are very they keep their value basically. Unlike stuff on the other two where Microsoft now has the platform of Game Pass, but Sony will massively drop them or just give them away for free a year later on PS Plus. And so on the Switch, what a lot of people see Nintendo's classic games like the original Mario games, Super Metroid, and all the franchises that you know and love, and you get this as part of the online service. And like I said, it's only like 30 quid a year. It's ass cheap, honestly, considering I just split the payment between a few different people, and I get access to this online, all this other stuff. But for me, it was quite nice because it meant that I've now got a bunch of games all in one place. I'm not having to individually download them. I will say there's not always the best quality on there. Like a lot of the first party stuff is great, and then there's these other games that they add that are a bit crap. But because it's so cheap compared to what Xbox Live used to be, I know they're getting rid of Live and rolling that all into Game Pass, but you used to pay 60 quid for Xbox Live for a year, and then PS Plus is like 50 or 60 quid. So for half that price, you're getting access to these features plus these old classic games, which, again, you might not be interested in that stuff. Luckily for me, I grew up playing a lot of those games, so I like having that. And it has the potential to expand to N64 or to Game Boy or Game Boy Advance. And there's already 100 games on there that are, I would say 50 of them are probably good. The others, maybe not so much. But like there is good quality games on there. And if they do keep adding earlier systems onto it with more of the first party stuff, the value of that just keeps growing and growing and growing. But it is specifically designed for people that are nostalgic about older Nintendo products. Like you've got like Link to the Past on there, which is a fantastic game, Super Metroid, the Mario All Stars, just really good SNES games. There are good NES games on there, but SNES games are generally better. That's not on there.
Ah,
They don't have an N64 on there. I'm more leaning towards hoping we get a Game Boy or Game Boy Advance. I don't care as much for the N64 stuff because it's all mediocre. So you know,
it's going to be a fight. This is where the fight starts.
and you know, so that's that. I know a lot of people have like and ah about the Nintendo Switch Online stuff. For me personally, it's fine. I actually think it's super cheap for what it is. I have no issues with it, and I get classic games, which I love my old games. I've still got my NES and my SNES. I've got physical cartridges of these games, but it's not for everyone because not everyone wants to play 16-bit and 8-bit games. But I really like it. I think it does a job, but it's a shame Dave's not here because he would shit all over it. Just on that note, again, I will not mention about PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now. I don't have it, but Dave does, and he basically the way that PlayStation Plus works is I think you get 2 free. It used to be free games a month. I think it's 2 now because you get a PlayStation 5 one in that. But basically, every month, as long as you keep paying for it, you get access to this library of PlayStation 4 games or whatever. But I'm not sure. I think PS Now is the streaming part of it. So basically, the biggest problem with the PlayStation stuff is you pay for a year 50 quid for PlayStation Plus, and then you pay 50 quid for PlayStation Now if you want that service on top. So overall, it's 100 quid a year just for both of these. And I'm sure the service is really good. I only know that there's free games given out on it, and I think you get access to older games that are on there as well. But I can't really speak to much of it. But I will say, yeah, for a year it can be quite expensive if you go with both parts of it. But that's about all I can say on it, really. So yeah, Jack, if you want to talk about your experiences with Game Pass more in depth or whatever, just crack on.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. £100 pretty much the same as what Xbox Game Pass would cost over a course of a year anyway, at 9 quid a month. So it's pretty similar. I guess you just pay for it differently potentially. If you're paying it as like a lump sum rather than a monthly subscription, but you can cancel whenever you want with Xbox. So, for example, if there's a game that I'm actually not, there's the library that's there isn't really to my liking, or there's nothing new there, I'll probably just cancel it for like 3 months. Then when something comes out that's useful, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll pop it in again. I will say there is one flaw with Xbox Game Pass, and that's how difficult it is to actually unsubscribe, and how much of a ball ache it is, especially on PC. I don't know what it's like on Xbox. I don't own an Xbox, but man, do they hide it. Like literally spend hours just trying to find out where you have to go to unsubscribe to it. And the shop is pretty bad. Like they could have done a better job on the shop, the Microsoft Store, to be fair. It's not the easiest way to navigate on PC or to know what's there.
I will say this is why I wouldn't buy it. I didn't buy the last Xbox to come out, and they put me off for a long time simply because they made canceling your subscription so difficult for Xbox Live Gold back in the day. You had to call up somebody and then explain your reasons for wanting to unsubscribe, which is, to me, no, you're going to lose me if you make me do that.
I will say it's improved since then. Like you can quite easily do it. It's just finding the page. Like once you find it, just bookmark it, and then that's it. And the other weird thing that I find is the fact that you pretty much always have to use a Hotmail account or Live account. I did finally get it to do it on a Gmail, but man, it took a while. Because every time you tried to log in, it's like, oh, use your Hotmail account. I'm like, who even uses Hotmail these days? Yeah, I mean, I do have a Hotmail account, but only for Game Pass. It's literally the only reason I have it.
Oh, it's my email that I've used for everything. So I've never changed it.
I'm all about Gmail these days.
I mean, I've got a Gmail account, but I have 2 email addresses: one for YouTube, one for everything else.
Somewhere out there's still lilcinderquill@hotmail.com. My Hotmail account from when I was about 12 years old.
Oh
dear. But yeah, like something I really want to bring up about Game Pass is, so with this generation of consoles, Microsoft have the Series, both the S and the X, and in the general sense, they were losing the last generation. They were not selling as many PS4s, and obviously, let's be real, that is their biggest rival. At the end of the day, they have the PC market locked down, along with all these other companies, like pretty much all Microsoft games for a while now have been releasing on PC. So, if you're an Xbox player or a PC player, you're going to get all that first party exclusive stuff. So that's cool. But they obviously came out, they needed a plan, and they needed something that was going to hook people in and was good value. Probably at a loss to them to start with. And that's kind of what Game Pass is. Now, I will put my hands up and say, like, look, I had a 360 and I didn't buy an Xbox One. But hands down, Xbox Game Pass is quite possibly the best subscription service there is right now. In terms of what you get, day one releases, all the new stuff that Microsoft are bringing out. And yeah, okay, you might not be into that stuff, but there are tons of third-party games, and they are paying for like day one to get on there, or they're getting things on there like constantly. Every month they're trying to put new games on there, and none of these other services come even close to the quality of it. And like I said, I've just been talking about the Nintendo stuff. I'm like, yeah, Nintendo's great. I got classic games, but Game Pass is actually insane value, and it's making gaming cheaper again, and it's showing that you don't need to spend 70 quid on a game, which is a price for a PlayStation 5 game, and probably the physical version of a Xbox game, to be honest. But you don't need to spend that anymore, right? What they're trying to do is get you locked in and constantly pay, like 10 quid a month if you want Ultimate or whatever it is, 10 or 12 pound. And that's insane, because for people who, like me, back in the day, I used to use the second-hand market all the time. I'd go and buy all my games second-hand because I was like, I can't afford, at the time, 35 to 40 quid a pop for all these brand new games. I was like, I just used to trade my games in and get second-hand games. Now with this, I don't have to spend. Like a good example was Outriders came to Game Pass on console day one, not on PC, which was annoying, but on console day one. That means that if I'm somebody who's not sure about a game, I can just hit the install button, play the game, and go, I don't like this. No worries. I haven't spent like 50 quid on the game. I've been given the fact that I can afford £10 a month. Yeah, okay, in the long run, you're going to be paying a lot more money, but I can afford £10 a month. That's a minimal amount of money to now be able to play all these games, like brand new games that are coming out. And like, I just don't see how anyone else is going to compete. Like, Sony definitely needs to have a better deal on their end. Nintendo won't give a fuck. They don't care what anyone's doing. But, seeing Microsoft do this now, it's like they are setting a trend. They may end up putting the price up, but even then, when you consider how many first games that are like brand new, like Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5, the new Fable, all this stuff is going to be day and date there, right? That's insane value, and not to include the other stuff that's there. So I don't know about you guys, but I really think like this is something that's going to be, we're going to see get even more kind of pushed in our faces as we go forward, where we do have Ubisoft Play Plus or whatever it's called, and EA Play or Origin Access, whatever it is now. These other companies are starting to do their own subscription services because it's just easier for people to get in board, and a lot of the time people don't cancel their subscriptions, they forget about them, so it's just easy money for them, but it also makes it cheaper for a lot of people, so I think this is absolutely like the way forward, honestly.
I think a lot of it comes down to making gaming more accessible and more affordable, because at the moment it's a very expensive hobby. For me personally, I can easily go through 200 quid a month playing games. It's a lot of money. That's just 4 games these days. Back along, I remember going back 5, 6, maybe 10 years, and 200 quid would get you like 10, 20 games potentially. I use GOG a lot more now because a lot of the games on there tend to be a lot more affordable, and it's a trip down memory lane, which is always good fun. But you go on Steam, Epic, 40, 50 quid, 60 quid a pop in some cases for these day one releases. That's hella expensive. And then you think of all the equipment you have to buy as well. Monitors, you buy the equipment, either a desktop PC or an Xbox, 500, 600 quid. You're talking about $1,000 before you've even started once you've bought all the equipment that you need. And then you're paying 100 quid, 50 quid, even if you're buying one game a month, it's 50 to 100 quid easy a month just to play the games on top of that. So I think what Microsoft have cottoned on to is the fact that people like Netflix, it's so much more accessible to buy a movie or rent a movie. Playing a game is difficult because it is a lot of expense. So for anyone starting out into gaming, is going to have to be supported by parents initially. I would have thought. For the most part, it's not something like a kid could just go out and be like, "Oh, here's 300 quid or 400 quid to splash." Like kids ain't gonna have that kind of money. So it is an expensive hobby, and I think most often forgotten of the fact that how successful the TV show and movie industry is off the back of the subscription-based services, Netflix, Now TV, Amazon Prime. They're all really good value, and people, like millions of people, subscribe to them because it's affordable. And I think ultimately Microsoft really want people to have a smart TV and literally be able to game directly from that. You don't even need to have an Xbox. You don't even need to have a personal computer. You can do it all from a smart TV, which I think is going to be what they're kind of pushing towards. But for those avid gamers like us who really see it go above and beyond and want to see it more as a hobby rather than an interest, obviously those subscription-based models are going to be far more affordable. I say, even if they put the price up, it's still going to be much better deal than buying. You could literally drop 10, 12 quid a month on Xbox Game Pass, and you could be pretty satisfied that every month you're going to get something new. There's going to be at least somewhat decent, and the library's so large. They just acquired Bethesda not too long ago, and all of the Bethesda games have come to it as well.
Doom.
So there's so many games and titles that are even available just in the library. Again, what they're adding to day one pass, and yet season passes as well. Like you say, you get like ultimate editions more often than not. So it is really good value. Like, I can't understate that enough. That is definitely the way forward.
Yeah, I think it's kind of sad how this is an amazing hobby, and a lot of people are just locked out because of the expense of it. And it's kind of like it sucks as a social thing when your friends are talking about games, and I know there's like kids that I knew that just couldn't really afford to take part in that, and so people are talking about things, and you're just kind of locked out. And obviously in society right now we've got a lot of problems with poor families not being able, like, just it affects every aspect of your life when you're poor and you can't take part in these hobbies. You can't go and play paintballing, or so gaming could actually be one of the more affordable things to connect a lot of people. And that is the problem, though. If the buy-in is so high, and if you're even talking about you want to buy a new game and it's 70 quid, it's just really off the table. And I think this is really the future. And as I started to see more about this new Xbox Game Pass, I was like, yeah, looking into maybe 5-10 years into the future, it's going to be just like what we're seeing with Netflix, with Disney Plus, with Amazon Prime, and all of these. We're just going to have a lot of different channels. And what I would love to see is something like different channels, perhaps that are locked into different companies. Like you'll get a channel for like action games, like kind of how you do with certain subscription services at the moment, that you subscribe to something like horror, like Shudder, and that will actually take titles that are copyrighted by various holders, but it just licenses them out in this one subscription service. So maybe you're just interested in FPS games, or maybe you're into more casual titles, puzzle games. You can just maybe pick that one channel, pay a smaller price, and then there's bundles, say, like the Sky TV bundles. You get all these channels for this price. And I think, yeah, that's what the future is going to look like. And I think that's going to be so much better than the way we have it currently, which is kind of fine-ish for people like us who don't mind. We're waiting for the games before they're even out. We're looking forward to what we want to buy, and we know how good the titles are. But a lot of people, they don't know how good the titles are. They don't know how reliable reviewers are. You can't really trust IGN a lot of the time. Yeah.
It is interesting because, like, I grew up basically for the longest time, and all we had was an old NES with about 3 games on it, and that was it for years. It wasn't until I was very lucky. A lot of people were getting newer consoles, and they would just give me the older console. So I ended up getting like a SNES and a Mega Drive and a Dreamcast and all this stuff later on. I eventually got a PC. I was behind for the longest time. It wasn't until I started having my first job I went out and bought a DS. That was the first console I ever bought. And that was about 120, 150. I don't know what it was at launch, but looking at the way games are now, it's bonkers. And let's also bear in mind, right? Most people, like the casual audience, right, or like your everyday Joe, they're gonna buy your FIFAs, your Call of Duties, like a racing game. They're the people that they aren't gonna necessarily look at every game and go, "Oh, that sounds interesting." They're not gonna play indie games. They just want to play, like Rocket League, Mario Kart, the games that are easy to get into and are big. And so the problem there then lies is that things like Call of Duty, things like FIFA, and these other games are no longer just an initial investment. It's like have 5 different versions. You've got Basic Edition, and then Super Edition, and then Premium. So the initial buy-in of like 50 or 60 quid is no longer a thing anymore, because on top of that, it's now, oh, you've got to buy this stuff if you want this, and it's ridiculously expensive, unnecessarily so. Like back when I had my Wii, the games I used to buy were £34, right? And that, to me, like, was completely. I didn't mind dropping £34 on a game, brand new game. I was like, absolutely. Same with like some of the PC stuff I bought, 34 quid. I used to buy physical PC games, with the discs, one of those. And as time's gone on, like prices have gone up, and it's just, I know that if this existed when I was younger, then I would have been like, "Hey, mum, look, it's like 10 quid a month." Tried to beg and be like, "Please, play this," kind of thing. But like, I know that would have saved me a lot of hassle. Now, obviously, I'm not completely sold on subscription stuff, because the only subscriptions I have are Amazon Prime, which includes Prime Gaming, which is an interesting service. Prime Gaming, you just get a bunch of free games. You just sign up to it, or I've got it because I've got Prime. And every month they go, here's like 4 or 5 games. You just install them, play them, no problem. It's not really much more than anything like that. I don't think you can actually buy games through there, but it's just like, I got a bunch of old SNK games like King of Fighters and Samurai Showdown, as well as like, I just right now before we were recording, I just got Battlefield 1 on there for free. So I'm like, cool. I'll never play it. But, you see it with the Epic Store as well. You do see this where they give away a free game to get you to come back and use their service.
Love
But
that.
yeah, which we do, everyone likes a free game, like, and it's, you never know what you're getting. At least with Epic, they tell you like what the next few games are. But it's interesting seeing this, because I am one of these people that I am a physical person. I do like buying physical copies of games. I bought a copy of Smash Brothers. I got the 80 quid special edition. I don't normally buy special editions, but I was like, Smash, I love it. And I bought the digital version, which was like 60 quid. So I spent way too much money when that came out, and that's like a very rare thing for me. I only do that with like certain games, but I am one of these people that do occasionally like to just buy the physical thing. So I don't always want to have subscriptions, and this is the only problem, is that if you're one of these people that subscribes to like Netflix and Game Pass and PlayStation Plus and Nintendo Switch Online and EA Play and Apple Arcade, it all starts to add up. And I think that's how they get you, is that maybe they give you away a month for free on Game Pass. It's like, here's a quid, here's a couple months. And then you forget about it. And then, it might be the only subscription service you have, but maybe you get other subscriptions, and suddenly you've got like 30, 40, 50 quid coming out a month, which is still the price of a game. You're still getting value there. But I think people have to be careful about picking and choosing, because realistically, I don't think you're going to want all of these. Like, I don't need Ubisoft Plus or whatever it is and EA Play. Like those games, not really for me. But you're starting to see all these companies do it, because they're trying to entice you in, so you forget about it. You're like, oh yeah, cool. It's all these free games. They're not really free. And it's interesting to see this happening, because I do think subscription models are a great way in, but I think the individual needs to be very careful about signing up to multiple ones, and also keep an eye on, like, if you get a free trial, make sure to cancel it if you don't want it.
Yeah,
you brought up an interesting point there with people who tend to play the more mainstream games with these subscription models, because I think one of the interesting things that's going to come out of this, if someone doesn't know if they would like a game or not, they're not going to drop a load of money. But if it's part of the subscription model, they're more willing to try these new games, which I think is real big for indies. Obviously, being an indie dev myself, it's something that you can get people to try your games who wouldn't normally try them. It's like, oh, it's just a download. Of course, I'll give this a go. And I think people are going to discover things that they wouldn't necessarily think they'd enjoy. But all of a sudden, you discover new things, and I think that's great.
Yeah, I think it's also a really good platform to launch games on. I mean, Outriders is a really good example, I guess, in some ways, of how successful being on Xbox Game Pass really was, because it was a hugely successful game for them on launch. But that's not to say there weren't issues surrounding the game itself. But in terms of a platform for launch, it proves how good it is for developers to get involved in something like that. So yeah, I again, it's just another thing I think is really interesting about the whole subscription model. I guess the only downside is you don't actually own anything. I mean, you don't really own anything that's digital anyway. Essentially, anything you own that's digital could be taken away from any subscription model. But I think it's worse in the sense of subscriptions because you don't really own anything that's on there. So if there's a game you really like playing, and then for some reason, I don't know, a developer falls out with the platform and they boot the game off of that model or that platform, then you then have to make a decision as to whether you want to buy the game. But at least then you've had that try before you buy. So I guess it works both ways in that regard. It's just something to be mindful of, the fact that you don't actually own anything. It's just, if something does happen and those games get taken off, then, if you subscribe specifically for that, that's just a downside or a risk, I guess.
I think it's really good for multiplayer games as well. You mentioned Outriders. When a game launches, I think it's really important for online games to have a healthy population of people playing. And if you're putting it on a pass, you're going to get a lot of people playing when it comes out, which is going to be really good for queue times in those games. It's going to be really good thinking of like MMORPGs. It's not going to be dead areas. You're going to have a lot of people. This is one of those things where MMO developers know this about giving away a free trial. It's about they want the area to be populated. Everyone benefits in a multiplayer game when a lot of other people are playing.
And it's also, I think I could be wrong now, but I think at one point Among Us was free on it, which is, Among Us. It was fucking a great thing to have there. But like, yeah, having like games that you can play. I mean, Among Us is cheap anyway, but like having games on there that are multiplayer based to play is great because, like you said, it's more players, and this is why for Microsoft it's good to have day one games on there, because like take a game that recently came out, like fighting games are a good example of this. If Guilty Gear Strive, and I can't remember if it came to that or if it's PlayStation exclusive, but if Guilty Gear Strive came out on Game Pass day one, right, you instantly got a way bigger player base, because now people are going to dive in and play it there because they're like, part of my subscription. And fighting games massively live and die by their player base, and so if they ever make another Killer Instinct, or they get, I don't know, King of Fighters 15's coming out, if they get that day one, that's huge. And if it's cross-play on all the platforms, even better. But like you've suddenly got like, these big player bases that are just there now, that, at least initially there's a big player base, a big boom. And like you said about the owning thing, now there is one cool thing that you do get with Game Pass that we haven't mentioned, is you actually get like 10, 15, 20% off in the shop. So you can then just go ahead and buy the game if you own Game Pass and get it like money off. Like I was holding up this little Nintendo Switch cartridge here. This is why I buy physical for some stuff, because I like having physical copies of games on my consoles, because they're not always going to be like this. The Switch isn't going to be supported in like 20 years time probably. So if I do get a lot of games on there, and the good thing about the Switch is that like pretty much every digital game I've seen, at least the good ones, got physical versions. So if I'm like, oh fuck, I need to get it, I can go and get it. But usually what happens is, as long as you've got it downloaded, it will still work. It's just if you want to buy it, and there's a cat. But yeah, so I think for the most part there are more good points for subscription services, like cheaper entry, obviously one, and a lot of people see it as free games. I know they're not technically, but like you do get that that ability to try stuff, like Greg was saying, you get to try stuff a lot without that initial drop of 50 quid. And yeah, it is gonna, you imagine a game like Hades. I don't know if Hades is on Game Pass, but let's assume it is. Hades was massively hailed as this like big game. Actually, in fact, I don't even think it's on. It might be out now. But imagine Microsoft get that and they go boom, right? They slap it in the Game Pass. Suddenly, that game has got loads more players because everyone's talked about that game and said how great it is. And then suddenly it's like, here's a really fucking good indie game, and they get even more like publicity from it. And I think that is only a good thing for the smaller developers anyway. And I think that's a really good thing that is going to come from, especially a platform like Game Pass, which is at the moment pretty much only seen in a good light. Maybe things get worse later on, but it's pretty much seen as like this is a gold standard of what we want the game industry to do, to give us this option. And hopefully Sony and other companies, probably not Nintendo, but the other ones follow suit and offer very good competitive products in that place.
Also brings Xbox and PC gamers together.
Yeah.
Which is another kind of thing that it does that's kind of like probably not noticed as much, but it is something, the gaming community is just one community ultimately. Yes, there's people who play PC, people who play consoles, but ultimately it's all just one big community. So anything that brings those communities together can only be a good thing for the wider industry, in my eyes at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest thing for me is that I'm not always going to subscribe to every single one of these things. I'm definitely going to pick and choose my preferences as to what I think is worth my time. Obviously, if you're a hardcore Microsoft person and you like their games, it's a no-brainer. If you're a Sony person and you like all the PlayStation stuff, it's a no-brainer that you are going to subscribe to PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now. Same with Nintendo. Like maybe you don't want to, but like the unfortunate thing with console gaming is that we live in a day and age where you do have to pay for the online, which is incorporated in part of these things anyway. That sucks. But I'd rather pay a little bit to be able to have access to that stuff. But I do think that for me personally, like I have Game Pass at the moment, and I have the Nintendo stuff, and I have Prime Gaming, which is part of Prime, and that's it. I don't need any of the others. But like, yeah, I could go and get Apple Arcade. I could go and get Ubisoft's one if I wanted to play all this. I don't really play Ubisoft games anymore. But like, if you like, Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six and all Far Cry and all the stuff they do, you can get access to this stuff early. It's cheaper, if you're really into that. Same with EA as well. You get access to their games early. You get a bunch of like offers. That's what all of these they're trying to do. They're trying to get you in and give you, or at least make you feel like you're a valued customer by giving you what they call it, like kind of like early access, and make you feel like a valued customer where you're getting VIP
customer.
Yeah, exactly. And you can obviously see like the writing between the lines there. That's not even a saying, but we'll go with that. And you can kind of see what they're trying to do. But if you are someone who plays a lot of EA games or Ubisoft games, Microsoft, whatever it is, there's pretty much something there for you, to get into, at least at the moment. And then if not, there's something like, let me just find the name of it. I think it's called like Utamic, which is basically like a kind of like you subscribe and you get access to a bunch of games. It's like on PC. It's like there's that. And that's probably that's the main ones that I found. Obviously, Google Play, similar to Apple Arcade. Again, very cheap as well. They're like $4.99 on the phones. Not that I want to play mobile games, but hey, £5 a month for any subscription service is dirt cheap. So
I think there's an understated thing about this. This is as much a part of digital games as it is about subscription services. And it's the same reason I bought a Kindle. It's because everyone these days, we don't have mansions to live in. We don't even have houses, most of us. We're living in flats or in shared houses. And we can't afford, we can't have a bookcase and cases full of games and everything. If you're a big gamer, this is one of the reasons I switched to Steam, is because I have hundreds of games now in my library. I don't have to have a massive shelf. And yeah, I think that's going to be very important for a lot of people.
Yeah, and also just easier to, downloading games is so easy these days. Get all the patches and everything all there done and dusted. Literally, even like some of the bigger games, 100 gig plus games, you just leave the machine on overnight, console on overnight, bang, done. You wake up in the morning, it's there, ready to go for when you want to start your gaming session. So I personally massively see the benefit of whole digital era that we're in now. The cat's just run off. But yeah, no, it's awesome. I don't even own a CD-ROM drive or a DVD drive anymore on any of my computers.
There's another interesting point about accessibility, which is that we talk about the buy-in, having to buy a whole new console, having to buy a powerful PC in order to run these games. We haven't even talked about the streaming services where you get the game more or less streamed to your screen. Now, I know they're not perfect. I know they're a lot to do with your internet connection quality. But for some people, that's all they've got. You know, they can't afford a whole new gaming PC, but they can still get to play these new games. And that's great.
Yeah, that's what PlayStation Now is for. I was looking it up earlier. But you get to stream PlayStation 1, 2, and 3 games. They're not, you don't download them, they just stream them. Now, I know that it varies in quality, and again, yeah. And people probably don't remember like the cloud gaming stuff that used to be a thing. Like, I mean, it still is a thing. You had OnLive, which was the big one back in the day, doesn't exist anymore. But that is something. xCloud is Microsoft's version. Oh no, we haven't even talked about Stadia. But like they do exist, these things that you can buy into. I think xCloud's a subscription. I don't know if it's been properly launched yet. But that is the thing. It's like if you're somebody who has a crap PC, this is all browser based. If you've got great internet, you can just play really good games through it. And again, it's another way of trying to make it a bit more accessible to the everyman. Because, like we said, gaming isn't cheap. Like it should be. Like, you know, the initial cost of buying a system or a decent PC is where most of the money should go, and the games should be a lot cheaper. Now, luckily, we do live in a time where indie games exist, and indie games can be anywhere from £1 to like 30 quid, but most of the time they're like 10, £15. So you can buy a few of those. You know, if you always do your research on if a game's good or not, or like if you want to before you buy it, just to get an idea of whatever. But you don't always have to like spend your money on the big ones. You can get the smaller ones, and I guess that's where the Humble monthly thing's pretty good, because yeah, you can get AAA games from that, but you can get a bunch of really good indies as well, and again, super cheap. But you know, that's this whole accessibility. I mean, that's what it comes down to, and basically is companies want to make money, but they also want more people playing the game so they can make more money. So you know, if you make it more accessible to most people, you're gonna essentially make more money from that. And you know, I'm really curious in about 5 to 10 years' time, how many more people are subscribed to the various different services, like how many members they have, versus how many people are still buying physical. Like, I'm forever going to buy physical and be subscribed to various things, because that's me. You know, if I choose to buy my Xbox Series X, then I'll probably buy physical stuff, because, like, you know, yeah, my Switch has a fuck off SD card in there, like, you know, it's like 256, which to be fair, most games are really compressed on the Switch, so they're not that big. So I can fit loads of games on there, but I still buy physical because, you know, I'm just that kind of person. But most people aren't going to bother, and we're seeing that already. You know, most systems that come out now, especially on console, it's about half and half. 50% physical sales, 50% digital sales, and that is going to slowly change with these submodels where it's going to be massively reduced. You're probably going to see it like 60-40 towards digital eventually. And you were saying about not having disk drives. I don't on this computer. This is the first computer I've built that doesn't have a built-in disk drive. So everything's now digital. My old one, I always have one because, or used to, because it was always handy if I, you know, for certain reasons. You know, I still have physical media in terms of DVDs and stuff like that, or like installation discs. But now, you know, streaming has become, or like downloads have become so much more efficient that you don't really need these things.
It's interesting because even like PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One S had a version which didn't have download only, to make it more cheaper and more affordable. Again, it comes down to that accessibility. You know, not everyone wants a disc drive. Say 50 quid to 100 quid.
Yeah, it's weird that the disc drive saves them that much money. It's very bizarre. Like taking that physical component out, it's like, oh, it's 50 quid cheaper. Is it? But yeah, you're right. Having those options are never a bad thing. And I think ultimately that's what I like about this is give me the ability to buy a game physically. Give me the ability to buy it digitally. Oh, you want to have a submodel in there? Give me that as well. You know, this also on a completely different topic. We'll get to it at some point. You know, this is why there are so many different ways of buying a game now anyway. It's not just these, you know, buy it and submodel there. You know, that's why free to play and all this other stuff exists. Because there are different, depending on your level of income, you're going to play different types of games. You know, a lot of the young generation that's coming up now that play Rocket League, Fortnite, you know, all the free to play stuff, they've never gone through what we've gone through of buying physical as much as we have. You know, and now that we're into the sub model, most kids growing up in, within the next 10 years, they're probably going to have the subscription model that parents has, and they're like, yeah, go wild, and they're not going to know what it's like to buy a physical game ever.
The pains of going to a shop to see if they actually have the game you want.
Yeah.
That was the first challenge.
Yeah, and you're seeing this with Game in the UK. Like, it's not just games that they sell now. They got toys and plushie and Pokemon cards and all these other things in it because they're becoming irrelevant. Most of these games still are. Like, I'll always stand by it. I'm a big fan of secondhand market because, again, it's cheap. It may not have to exist in the future because of these models that are coming in, but I don't mind these brick and mortar stores because it's like, hey, I want to buy this game, but I don't want to buy it brand new. And admittedly, now with digital, you get crazy sales where games are like, here's like 80% off. Now, usually if a game's 80% off and it's like £1, I'm like, maybe steer clear. But like, like if there's a game like Hades that's, I can't remember how much it was, like 20 quid, and they're like knocking 50% off of it, you're like, that's a pretty fucking good deal. So that's another interesting thing is the digital side of this in general with subscriptions and having those deals and stuff. It's just very, very enticing to most people now because it's you're just saving us so much money in the long run.
Honestly, that's why I invested in PC, just because I think in the long run I've saved hundreds of pounds from Steam sales. It's an investment in hardware, but prices on console are just so much higher to the point where I more or less got priced out past a certain point in my life.
Yeah.
That's why consoles are so cheap, though, isn't it? They make their money on the games, not the consoles themselves.
And that's also it's worth mentioning is that the idea is that not so much now, but consoles were for people that didn't want to, don't want to faff around with PCs. And this is the problem with PCs is that everyone's got different hardware. You can mix and match so much hardware. The idea of a console is it's plug in and play. Not so much now, but that was the idea. You buy the game exactly. You buy the game for a PS5. Everyone should have the same experience. That's the idea. That's why they exist. And also, I look at a console. I think, fucking hell, it's £500. I'm not buying that. To some people, like the PS3, that was a very cheap Blu-ray player. So there are, swings and roundabouts. This thing was 280 quid, right? This is probably one of a console under 400 quid to me is worth it. I mean, basically, it's a portable tablet that turns into a console. But for me, this is absolutely worth the 280 quid that I spent on it because I only had fantastic experience. Like for me, but that's me. Like I'm a big Nintendo head. But like I said, with these, people now who do invest in an Xbox. They don't have to spend a single penny on a physical game anymore because they've got Game Pass. Same with PlayStation. You can go on there and get a bunch of things.
It's a whole other topic, but I think Steam Deck might well do that for the PC audience. It might allow people to start getting their foot in the door of those big sales and those big lists of Steam games. But it's just a one thing. The hardware should just work.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, it should just work, and you that's what makes it. Yeah, it's Valve making it, so hopefully. But yeah, I think for the most part, my feelings on this for subscription models going forward is that this is primarily a good access way for people that do not have a high income, and even for people like us. It's just we're just not spending crazy ass amounts of money to play games we want to play. There's going to be so many people now that are just going to be like, I'll play it when it comes to Game Pass. I'll play it when it comes to PlayStation now because they just don't that price tag on those games that they want you to buy, like 60, 70 quid. In time, that will go because they realize that we're being priced out by the subscription model, so they'll have to come up with other ways. And hopefully physical media will actually go down in price. I don't see it happening anytime soon, but overall, I think sub-models is a really good way forward. There are some caveats to it, but generally speaking, it is a cheaper way into gaming for more people, and that's only a good thing in my eyes.
Yeah, exactly. More accessible, more people get involved. And yeah, much more affordable for, your everyday gamer to your, up-and-comers. And people who are like me, obsessed.
And I think it's going to be really great for developers as well, because you talk about there's a lot of people who just want to wait for the game to be on the Game Pass. There's also, in this day and age, a lot of people who just want to wait for the game to come out on sale, which the developers don't necessarily benefit as much from. but something we've seen with Epic Games. Say what you want about the Epic Games software. I have a lot of problems with it. But Epic have given a lot of upfront money to developers to say, we're just going to support this and we're going to give it away for free or, as part of a subscription, whatever. But here's just a lot of money up front. Develop what you want, and then people can just play it.
Yeah, that is hugely important, for like you said, for developers, because there are so many options now for for putting your game out there. I think having a spotlight, I assume there is some kind of like spotlight thing on like Game Pass probably every month, like, hey, these are the games you should be checking out, or like, this is the game of the day or something. I imagine that's probably huge for a lot of indie developers or a lot of just sort of smaller teams, because now a game that might just be glossed over, you slap it in Game Pass, go, hey, this is the game you're getting this month, and this is your first game, and it happens to be the thing that they made. They get a big influx of people playing it, and then word of mouth and all that. So, yeah, in terms of that sort of stuff, it is pretty fantastic. I don't have any more things to say on the topic. So, do you guys have anything left you wanna bring up?
I was just going to say, Microsoft have traditionally been always really good for indies, at least since the Xbox 360. I'm thinking about like Braid, Dust, and Elysian Tale. So yeah, that's just my final thoughts on that. Is that, yeah, hopefully, as a game developer, have a vested interest in this side of things as well. Is that this isn't going to be just good for consumers. I think it's going to be really good for developers trying to get their games out there and to be played by a wider audience. People are going to be able to just go, okay, this looks interesting, and I don't have to buy it. This is worth playing. They become a fan. Maybe they buy the developer's next game, or maybe just the ratings and the sheer number of downloads causes that developer to get invested in by the company they're being supported by, or another big company. They get picked up.
Yeah, my final thoughts to this really. I think Microsoft, there's a lot of bad things going on in the industry. Microsoft, I think, have done a really good thing here. I think they've cottoned on to the fact that actually there is another way of, a better way for people to get hold of games. And I think they've jumped on the back of it, followed the footsteps of your Netflix, your Now TVs. And I think they're onto something. I really do. And I really hope it gets supported more and more across the industry. And I just want to give credit where credit's due. And I think Microsoft done a really good thing here. And kudos to them for, going out of their way to do something that no one else is doing in the market, really. Certainly not to the extent. I think Microsoft are now leagues ahead of everyone else, including PlayStation. And I think PlayStation will eventually get there. They're not just going to sit idly by whilst Xbox gain a larger market share. But I think Xbox and Microsoft are really going to benefit off the back of this. I really do. I think it is the future of gaming. And I think we'll see more and more of it as time goes on. And as more and more people see the benefits.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about Microsoft doing this, because companies could all just kind of agree to not go below a certain price, agree to just keep gouging gamers. But the fact that Microsoft has gone and pushed this out there, Sony is going to have to respond. They're going to have to put their price lower, and they're going to have to come up with something reasonable. So Microsoft are more or less forcing Sony's hand, which is, kudos, thumbs up to that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is you got to bear in mind Microsoft are making a huge loss, probably not just on the console, on this to start with. Now that Game Pass has got that insane amount of traction, and people are like, this is fucking great, that you see more and more and more and more of the numbers rising. And now that loss that they made earlier on years ago has started to pay off. And you're right, Sony, people are looking at Sony being like, hey, you need to do something similar. Like, your offering's good, but like the difference right now is here's Microsoft right up here, and here's Sony. Like, the jump is huge, and you will see Sony do something because they're like, hey, we own the fucking console market. Who the fuck do you think you are? And they will do something, and that is only good for consumers because now you've got competition, and now you then, and look, Nintendo, they don't give a fuck, right? They're playing their own game. They're off playing with the ball like down the road. I want them to be better. I don't think they will, but at the end of the day, they're making bank on the Switch. The Switch is selling ridiculously well. They don't give a fuck about this stuff. But I do think it's hugely important for PlayStation and Microsoft to be constantly like this. One does something, the other one should respond, and they should be constantly offering these good, these services. that people can get in on the ground level and just be affordable. And I really look forward to seeing what Sony does. Right now they've pissed a lot of people off by basically saying, "Oh yeah, all our games are multi-platform. We just wanted you to buy our, new console." So how do you fix that? You give a good way. You make your service a bit cheaper, and you start giving away more games, and you start to expand that library. And then suddenly people are going to be like, "Well, you've got God of War, you've got Horizon, you've got all these like big names." And then Microsoft's coming out with like Forza and Fable and all this stuff, and then suddenly, as a consumer, you're like, if you have to pick one, that's a coin toss, and I really hope to see that, because that's going to be so good for people. Like in the future, it's going to be so good.
Well,
that's another
competition is only going to benefit the consumer at the end of the day.
Yeah,
good competition equals a good deal for the consumer, and Microsoft have very much been on a buying spree, buying up studios left, right, and center over the last couple of years. And again, it gives them a great platform to put their products on the market and make them accessible.
Yeah,
and get people interested in IPs that they wouldn't have otherwise tested or tried.
Yeah,
that's another great thing that this competition is doing for Sony, is that Microsoft has made all of their games on Game Pass, and their games in general have always been accessible on PC. And we're seeing finally a lot of those PlayStation exclusives are coming to PC. We've seen Horizon Zero Dawn. Like for me, I really only bought a PS4 so that I could play Bloodborne and later Spider-Man. And if I didn't have to, I really wouldn't. It's just a big kind of investment of money, and I don't need the space to be taken up by another console. I would really rather just have a PC and my Switch, and maybe a Steam Deck.
Which is quite funny, because I think a lot of PC players that I know, like my older brother, who's massively always been a PC player, has a PC and a Switch. Because let's be real, Nintendo stuff's never coming to PC. That's the thing, right? That when it comes to that, like Microsoft, Sony can put their games wherever they want, right? And people are going to play them. Nintendo isn't going to do that. And so if you are somebody who plays on PC, it makes sense to have both, because now you're getting all the fucking quality on this handheld, and you're getting all the basically Microsoft, Sony, and everything else on a PC. And we may go in a time where Microsoft and Sony just end up becoming, sub-services only. Microsoft maybe more so, but that'll be, that's definitely a valid thing that could happen in the future. Yeah, and to your point about smart TVs earlier, I forgot to address this. Microsoft are already teaming up with smart TVs that have built-in Game Pass into them, so that is a thing that's happening now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited for it. I mean, it's probably not going to affect me as much, because I've already invested in the PC side of things for myself. But it's just another way that you can get more and more people interested in the gaming market and the gaming industry, especially, I guess, the younger side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Well,
all right,
I think that pretty much covers us for this session, guys and gals. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed what we've talked about today. Please do check out Killjoy's channel at the Engineering Bay and Greg's at Egregious Games. I will be putting the links in the description below, so you can check them out if you have the time. I'm Don Hayes. Below is Killjoy. To my right is Greg. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And as always, until the next time, peace.